let's talk about his dressing room antics last night then, because when we all saw him give that speech, don't know about you, but there was a little flutter in my heart, there was a little tear in my eye, and I thought, Can we do this? Can he make them believe? Because I'm starting to believe, and I'm just laying here in bed. And now I feel like, oh, go on then. Like, if you win us a trophy, how can I say goodbye?
I've gone so close to being Ange out. I think last time I was on, I had
was it a foot or a toe?
That was a toe. My toe was left in. Now maybe a leg's still in there. And look. Yeah. More so because of that speech that he gave in the dressing room. And not so much what he said, but I looked around at the reactions of the players. Everyone's buying into what he's doing. Every single person. Look, it's been an unprecedented season. We speak about injuries. OK, not going to go on about that. But even when all the players are back fit, that everyone said, well, when the players are back fit, it's going to change. Everything's solely on the Europa League. So he's been resting players, giving players 45 minutes here and there. Never fully been focused on the Premier League. It's solely Europa League. So I'm going to say if they lose the final, then he probably should go. Yeah. And you won't have me crying if he goes, because he probably deserves to go. If he wins, there's no way you can parade the trophy in front of thousands of fans that there's going to be there and then sack him. It just cannot happen.
And I said this morning on talkSPORT, right? I said, I still don't believe he is the right man.
Correct.
Because of what I've seen over the 38 games, and even at times last season, bar those 10 games, I've not seen any consistency, regardless of the injuries on both sides of this season and last season. So if I look at that, I don't think that what he wants to do, unfortunately, is sustainable at Tottenham. In a cup, it's different. Yeah. And obviously, I think it's only him, Jose and Poch that have got us to a final in, I actually don't even know the number of years. It was something ridiculous. So that's where it leaves me with him, that even though I want to be back in, and I am back in right now, let's see what happens, I still don't believe that he is the right man to take us forward. Is this where you learned on it, Rick?
I'm the same as you, Ab. So I'm really sad because if I watched that interview last night, he gives in the changing room, and I haven't got knowledge of the 19 domestic defeats and the cup exits, then I look at that interview and think, oh, I'm really bought into this manager. But the problem is I can't forget or erode from my mind the domestic campaign that we've had and the nature of our defeats and the manner of some of the exits that we've had in the Cups, the Liverpool game at Anfield for one of them. And again, look, Liverpool are a great side, and I have to qualify and say that I know we've been decimated by injuries for a second season in a row. Totally understand that, totally get that. But the reality is for me that, barring the first 10 games of last season, back to your point, I've not seen really any point of consistency to give me the confidence that giving Ange Postecoglou more money in the summer on better players would assure me we're going to get better results. Because the problem is, I think, there's been games I've touched upon that even when we've had injuries, I think there's still been enough quality on the pitch to get results. And I think where we are now in terms of this Europa League run, I'm not going to take anything away from Ange. I think tactically he's managed it ever so well in terms of the Frankfurt and this Bordeaux game. But you have to also think about it. As a set of players, do these set of players want to be remembered for finishing 16th, 17th in the league, which would be arguably Tottenham's worst ever Premier League finish, or do they want to be remembered as being European legends for the football club, of winning a trophy for the first time in over, 40 years in Europe? So I do think as well the players are also playing for themselves. I'm not trying to distract away from Ange's tactics on the night. I think he done it brilliantly against, Frankfurt and Bordeaux, but I do think the players are also playing for themselves and their respect, because, let's be honest about it, Romero, he wants to move on in the summer. You've got this weird situation where you're going to have him leading us out in our European final, which we could win for the first time in 40 years, and his head's been in Madrid for most of the season. Again, we know there's players that are missing, the likes of, obviously, Maddison out for the season, Bertha out for the season, Sonny, where does that leave Sonny in terms of his place if he comes back in? How does that work around that deja vu situation around Harry Kane 2019? So there's a lot, I think, to unpack, and I know so many people out there are so demotivated for yet another managerial search in the summer, given our 72-day search for a manager. But at the same time, it's really hard to forget what you've seen domestically and think this could work with more funds
Well, it's true, because you're also in danger of then going down the Manchester United route, aren't you? I know obviously they finished a lot higher in the table than we will this season when they've won trophies. But you're going down that route where you're saying, OK, because you've won a trophy, we're going to pay. That's papering over everything of what we've seen on a very big sample size. We're going to still give you more money. We're going to stick with you. And then hypothetically, we get to November time and, you know, it's all gone wrong again. And we say, OK, well, we should have got rid of him after the cup.
We also, right after the summer transfer window as well, Clippers had. If we go into next season and we start off 5, 6, 7 defeats and you sack Ange Postecoglou, all the work you've done in the summer in terms of bringing players in for him, that goes out the window because somebody else will want their set of players. And then suddenly, we know what Tottenham is like. You've had squads over the years where you've had 3 or 4 different players suited for other managers. This is the problem we've got this summer. It's a massive, massive summer for the football club.
I think the example you give with Erik ten Hag is because it's so fresh in people's minds is the only reason that we discuss it. Yeah. Because if that hadn't have happened and then Spurs win Europa League, I don't think anyone would be sat here saying, well, look what happened to Manchester United. Look what's still happening to Manchester United, by the way. They've got rid of Erik ten Hag and they've arguably got worse. Yes, they're in the Europa League final as well, but domestically, they've got worse. Yeah. Last season was their worst ever. This season's even worse than that. So that didn't work for them. And I sit there and I think, I can't be this hypocrite that I sit there on the radio, I've had Ricky on before and said it as well, that before every season starts, I would take 17th if Spurs win a trophy, any trophy, League Cup, I don't care what it was, any trophy. And then if it actually does happen, I sit here and say, well, I'm not happy with that. I want the manager to go. I can't sit here and do that. If he wins the Europa League, it's still a big if.
It's a big if.
I know we've beaten Manchester United 3 times this season, but it's still a huge if to win this trophy. But if we do, he deserves an opportunity, in my opinion. I will forget all the league campaign. I will forget finishing wherever we're going to finish. And I will say, you've got that curse of the trophy. And he can walk around. He'll be the coldest manager in the Premier League, by the way. I always win things.
Imagine him just dropping that whole bar, right? Let's say that. Just picture the scene, OK? It's Bilbao. We've won the Europa League. Does his little presser, or he goes up to the camera after and he says, I told you I always win things in my second season, mate. Yeah. Cups his ear, mic drops, walks out, and then he leaves.
I think, do you know what, on that
coldest moment in football history, it's got to be.
I honestly think for Ange, I mean, this is the thing about whether he'll stay or whether he'll go. I think for him, personally, I think that would be the perfect thing for him to do is if he wins the trophy and parts ways with the club. Because to be fair, at a club like Tottenham, you know, you think back to when Pochettino said it at the time, you know, if he said, if I won the Champions League here, what would be next for him? Because it's almost you've completed the game at Tottenham. The reality is that, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, we've been Spurs fans for many, many years here. You know, the reality is that, are Tottenham at this point going to be challenging for a league? The answer is no. So the reality is that, what success can you get with a club that's had a 17-year trophy drought? If you win a cup at Tottenham,
you're doing the impossible.
You're doing the impossible anyway. So the thing for next season is to start and go into next season on the back of this domestic campaign. I think Ange could go out into the sunset and would arguably go and get a great job out of this. Yeah. You know, because whatever happens to a manager at Tottenham, they always end up doing well after them.
Yeah.
If Spurs would have won a trophy last season and then finished 16th in the league, I'd be, get him out now. Yeah. But he hasn't. They haven't won a trophy for years and years. Now they're on the brink of winning. I think the players, and talking as an ex-player and what I would have felt, just because they're finished 16th in the league, I wouldn't go, if they won the Europa League, they're in the Champions League, I wouldn't go, I don't really want to go there. I would look at Ange as a manager and go, I'd love to play for him.
Well,
I'd watch what he done last night in the speech.
Young players want to do that.
You've got, OK, Romero potentially going to leave. You've got Van der Ven, if he stays, hopefully he stays, probably one of the best centre-halves in the Premier League. You've arguably got 3 or 4 of the best young players in the Premier League, along with a few other teams. You've got players that are going to be a year older, that have won something if we win it, that have that winning mentality.
Have the experience of finishing 17th.
You're in the Champions League. You're attracting players that can come in. Forget the league. No player is going to sit there in summer, if we win and win the Champions League, and go, well, I'm not going because they finished 17th.
But it's not going to happen. Going into next season, even if we win the Europa League, at the first sign of trouble, I think fans are going to turn quite early. Yeah. I might be wrong. I don't know.
The last 4 games, though, the last 4, maybe 5 games, solely concentrating on the Europa League. Solely.
Yeah, and
all of us here, you both sit here.
No one really cares.
Do you care if you win the next 3?
We don't care now about, all due respect, Palace, Villa. I mean, I don't care. We want Spurs to win.
I don't care if we lose the next 3, as long as we win against Man United.
I couldn't care less. I actually couldn't care less. And to be honest with you...
But that takes us to, what, 22 defeats?
Yeah, but I mean...
But then after that, are you going to say, yeah, but we lost 22?
Yeah,
No, because we don't care.
When you've had 19, what's the difference? No, 20, 21, 22. At least no one can ever sing that, 20 lost in a season, and then potentially go and win a cup. I think I checked out of it. Once we'd had like the 12th loss, I was like, you actually can't hurt me anymore. Like, I'm out. I'm emotionally out of this. But it is funny the way that we obviously just spoken about Ange there, because a man can hurt you 19, 20, 21 times, but you give one cup and everyone's still, have I been too hard on him? Should I get back on board?
I guarantee you, after last night, there's probably a percentage of support, like yourself, that have gone back to, I think that
interview, when people watch that interview, it's very hard to not want him to succeed. But again, what you can't forget is, I think me and Abs have been consistent on this, is that you can't also forget the manner of some of the things we've seen this season. You can't forget that.
But right now, I'm in a toxic relationship with my club and I'm being gaslit by them to get back on board.
At the moment,
my whole life.
Isn't there? There's a real siege mentality for Ange and the team against everyone else, bar the supporters. Yeah. And I absolutely love it.
I do love that. I've got to say, just on Ange, the way he's spoken about us from a media perspective, whatever you think about him tactically, statistically in terms of the league, you can't help but be proud of the way he's represented us as a manager of the football club and the way he's spoken up for us in terms of the media. Because look, let's be honest about it, whatever you think about Mourinho and Conte and the fact they didn't get the players they wanted to be successful here, they, I think, felt that maybe Tottenham for them as a club were maybe below them. They were beneath them. Yeah. Whereas, to be fair to Postecoglou, I think he's always, definitely in these most recent few months, really stood up for the values of the club and the fans' values of the club, which, again, he deserves credit for.
And been protective as well. Yeah. He's been very, very protective. And that is nice to have a man like that will protect the club, because we've not always had it.